My name is Roger Evans. I live in Littlestown, Pennsylvania, which is about 7 miles southeast of Gettysburg. In May of 1970, I was a student at Kent State University. Probably less than 10 times in my life have I went into depth about what happened in May of 1970. It was my sophomore year, and our country was in turmoil. We basically had the war in Vietnam, aside from civil rights, in just previous years, the assassination of Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy. The Vietnam War was a TV war. We saw images daily on the nightly news of our boys dying over Vietnam. Over 50,000 service members. Basically what led up to the shootings at Kent State was just a multiple things that I can remember. I remember vividly watching President Nixon on TV informing us, and I believe this was April 30th of 1970, that we're now bombing Cambodia and invading Cambodia with the help of South Vietnam under pretext of going after North Vietnam's supply routes. This is obviously against what Nixon was telling us all along, that we were basically going to get out of Vietnam, peace with honor, or Vietnamization, I believe is what they called it. And here we are escalating the war by bombing Cambodia and invading them. Boots on the ground, they call it nowadays. So Friday, May 1st, school's out. Of course, as any kind of university, we had a healthy downtown section with free-flowing taps of beer. Students got liquored up and went back on campus, and they burned down the ROTC building, of which we had a rather large presence of ROTC on our university. Burned it to the ground. And of course our Governor Rhodes at the time, he was a strict, by-the-book kind of man, sent in the National Guard on Saturday, May 2nd, to secure the area. Kent State is a rather large university, but a lot of the students go home on the weekend. I happen not to have. And I remember walking around the university both Saturday the 2nd and Sunday, May 3rd, and just seeing the National Guard's presence, students mingling about. Remember distinctly smelling the wood that had burned from the ROTC building just seemed to linger over the campus. Of course, Sunday night, May 3rd, a lot of students are coming back onto the campus, and we wake up May 4th, Monday, to just a gorgeous, lovely spring day in northeastern Ohio. Probably not a cloud in the skies, going to reach the mid-70s, and just, if you're on campus, college student, that was the life. It also happened to be the last day that you could cancel a class. And I had a 5-hour zoology course that was just a thorn in my side. And my goal that day after my first morning class was to make my way from my dormitory up to the administration office to cancel this class. Getting around towards noontime, I'm starting to make my trek around the campus to get up to the administration building, and that takes me in front of Prentice Hall and Taylor Hall, and up on the hill looking down the commons where the ROTC building was. And of course, right there by Taylor Hall and on the hill, I walked into probably about 300 or 400 kids, maybe 500 kids, mingling about on top of that hill, shouting down at the National Guard, which were down the hill on the opposite side, across the commons to where the ROTC building used to stand. I would just want to get down that hill, through the guard and administration building, but I didn't quite know how to make that path, since there was nobody in the commons. It was like no man land. Next thing I know, the National Guard are marching across the commons, and they start to shoot tear gas at us kids standing up there on Taylor Hill. I remember the kids skittering back down the opposite side of the hill, either to the football practice field or to the parking lot of Prentice Hall. I was in the far back corner of the parking lot, and the National Guard eventually made themselves down to the far side of the football field, and then they turned around and marched back up to the top of the hill by Taylor Hall. And as they were doing this, a vacuum was created, and the students started approaching the National Guard again. I remember my thought was still to somehow get to the administration building to drop this class. Next thing I know, I hear gunfire. And I dropped down back behind the car, and I was all by myself, just kneeling behind this car and trying to digest what was actually happening. You hear this gunfire. I read later where there was over 50 shots taken, lasting about 13 seconds, I believe. I remember the gunfire stopping and trying to collect my thoughts, and I remember hearing some kids yelling out they're shooting blanks. I'm smelling the gun smoke in the air, and I look at this car beside me. It's got a window shot out, basically exploded out. I'm thinking, you know, blanks don't do that. I peek up over the car and I look up the hill where the National Guard were, and they had apparently made a 180 and went back down the hill towards the Commons, thinking they're probably going back to the ROTC building, what used to be the ROTC building. I looked about 20 or 30 yards and I saw these kids frantically, I could tell there was panic in their face. And of course, we were all in shock, I'm sure. However, I see this one kid laying in the street. I walked over to where that young man was laying, and he was laying on his stomach. And it was as if someone had taken a bucket that you'd mop a floor with, full of blood. And I remember the vivid image of the blood just pouring down off his right shoulder and collecting in to the gutter area and slowly making its way down towards Memorial Hall. I obviously was in shock. I knew that kid was dead. I looked up towards the hill, and I saw some kids that had been shot and they were being tended to by other students. I'm just trying to digest, you know, what happened here, when around the far corner of Taylor Hall, 4 National Guardmen had circled around that complex, and I noticed them off my right there about 50 yards from us, and they were in full National Guard uniform with gas masks on and their rifles, and they were marching over to where this young man was laying at my feet. And I said to myself, I'm dead. I mean, what's to stop him from keeping on shooting? And I'll never forget, as they were marching over, I turned around and I slowly walked back through Prentice Hall parking lot. And I remember as I walked through the parking lot, I saw both the girls that were shot. And one I got fairly close to, the other one I didn't care to get too close to. And I saw that one of the girls had been shot in the throat, and didn't look good for her. I remember vividly getting back to my dormitory no more than 10 minutes after the shooting, 15 at the most, and all my fellow students that lived in the dormitory, which was Tri-Towers dormitory, were out in front, probably a couple hundred kids, just laughing and thinking there was a party going on. And I've got tears streaming down my eyes, not only from the shock that I am, but from the tear gas. And I'm yelling at these kids that they don't realize there's dead students up there, and they think, you know, I'm just full of crap. And then by then, you started hearing all the ambulances. They closed the campus down. It's odd, my roommate was from Wisconsin. I was at a loss, didn't quite know what I was going to do since campus was shut down. So I says, heck yeah, let's go up to your hometown. And on the way to his hometown, we stopped off at Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin in Madison. They closed that place down due to a bunch of riots. We ended up taking our classes by mail. I never did get to drop that zoology class. All of our finals were by mail. Ended up getting a B in that class anyway. The irony of it all.
Tin soldiers and Nixon's coming.